What's up, gang? Another Tech Corner coming your way here in just a few moments. I've got an awesome guest. We're going to talk about changing from awareness to culture, something yours truly is a big fan of. If this is your first time tuning into Tech Corner, thank you so much for taking some time to tune in to us today. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe, turn on the notification bell. We have new content on our channel daily new content. You never get bored. Our content, some of it is bite-sized, some of it's a little bit longer. You'll definitely enjoy it. We've got something for everyone. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, please make sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star rating. Again, new content every day. Monday through Thursday, we do our practitioner brief. Every Friday, we have this awesome Tech Corner. And then on the weekends, just go out, enjoy, be with your friends, family, enjoy some other time out, or catch up on our CISO Talk podcast, where you can catch the latest conversations between two practitioners. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's episode, because I promise you it's a really, really good one. Here we go, folks. Let's get Tech Corner started.
From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast, Tech Corner. And now, join me in welcoming your host and CISO, James Azar.
Joanna Huisman, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's so awesome. I'm so excited to have you here. For folks who don't know Joanna, and if you don't know Joanna, like, where have you been living, right? So Joanna has a very rich history within our industry, but she's currently the Senior VP of Strategic Insights and Research at KnowBe4. If you can't tell by her shirt, how do I get one of those cool shirts?
We will get you on.
Joanna, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time to be with us today.
My pleasure.
So, Joanna, before we get started and we talk a little bit about how do we change from awareness to culture and so forth, give our audience who may not know you just a brief history, kind of how you ended up in the role you're in and kind of your journey in what you do today.
Sure, absolutely. So I have a unique background. I was a practitioner in this space. I was in research, and now I'm with a provider. So I started off leading the global security awareness and training program at ADP. And then I moved from there to Gartner, where I did the research for 4 years on the space of security awareness and training, 3 of those years solo, and published 3 Magic Quadrants and all of the research in that space. And then I moved over to KnowBe4, happily. And so now I'm with the best provider in the industry.
So that's awesome. I love that. You just kind of put that in there. But I love your background, because I think your background is so critical. So many times, you speak to an analyst or researchers who've never really done the work, who come with the theory of it, right? You're an actual practitioner. Yeah. You actually did the work for the largest payroll company in the world, right? ADP. And so let's talk a little bit about that. Our topic for today is kind of changing from just, pure awareness, which I think is a buzzword at this point, to culture, which I think is really the difference between looking at a phishing test and deciding whether or not you've got awareness, to really building sort of a constant security culture. What are some of the things you've seen over the years that kind of brought you to where you are today?
Sure. So, I think, clearly the time that I had spent at Gartner was very eye-opening to me, right? And so over the course of 4 years, I spoke to thousands of Gartner customers, did, more presentations than I can count at conferences and virtually, and, kept coming back to the same thing. And it was that clients understood the need for bigger, broader awareness in this space, although they didn't know how to do it, right? And there wasn't a lot of investment for it. So there was that. The other piece was that for those that were doing something in and around security awareness and training, they were using content and programs that were outdated or not interesting, not engaging, content that was written by security practitioners versus people who really understand human learning and human behavior and what gets people to engage in content. And so, I saw this shift over the course of those couple years spent there, seeing clients go from this, we can do it ourselves, or, we'll buy something that, provides us with kind of minimal relief or a minimal product, to wanting to embrace a more holistic awareness and training program that really connected with the employee, but connected in a way where it would get them to re-engage continuously versus it being kind of a one-time event.
Right there, the recent conversations we've been having, right, industry-wise, practitioners, whether it be on Clubhouse and some of the rooms we're in, or even in some of the live sessions I do, is kind of the false sense of being prepared for a cyber incident.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? Kind of the concept of almost purple teaming or red teaming and blue teaming, or doing a pen test. If everyone knows I'm doing a pen test, then they're inherently ready to counteract some of the things that go on during a pen test. But the threat actors, the criminals, they don't really give us notice when they're about to knock on our door. They just kind of show up. And awareness is almost the same, right? It's become one of those things where you kind of expect the phishing email from the security team to come at some point, and you either click it or you don't, and you go about it. And if you click it, you go through that 10, 15-minute training thereafter. You may get a conversation depending on how many times you've done it. But we're really not addressing the main challenge here, which is, we all interact with technology. Technology is an inevitable part of our work life, right? We're not going to stop opening emails. So how do we switch from kind of the awareness aspect to the culture aspect?
Sure. So, I think, and I always get in trouble when I say this, but, and I used to get in trouble when I used to engage with my Gartner friends in technology, but technology can't solve the world's problems, right? And so, especially in security, it's a necessary, don't get me wrong, it's an important ingredient, but it doesn't fill out the entire recipe, right? And so you need, different contributors in that recipe. And one is driving awareness, right? And so you could have the best technology in the world, but all you need is one of your humans to click on something that was sent to them, and you're off to the races, right? And so I think that once you understand that and how important that human component is in driving and protecting your business, then you can look at, okay, so in order for me to start focusing on how these employees, how these humans can not only better protect and defend their professional environment, but their personal one, right? Because it goes back and forth really nice. What do I need to do to feed them in order to be able to have that assurance that they're going to know what to do instinctively when they see something, right? And so that's the point that you want to get your employees to, right? And it's not just technology, and it's not just, awareness and training. It's a combination of both. And only then can you start to lead your organization into a security culture where this is instinctively done by your employees, and it's something that becomes the fabric of, who your company is.
So you kind of said something a little bit ago early in your statement that I think is very interesting. And James McQuiggan and I from Also Know Before, we've debated this a plethora of times, which is the idea that I think we're doing technology wrong today when it comes to security. So we're thinking of how a computer behaves when we do technology rather than how a human behaves when it interacts with technology. And so traditionally, our thinking is flawed to begin with from the onset. Yep. I don't dispute awareness and the need for awareness, because I think anything that you want to do, it's like road signs on the road are part of driving awareness, right? It's part of driving safety awareness. Could you imagine a highway where there was no signs on it, just a speed limit sign? No, caution, sharp curve. No, caution, animals or wildlife ahead. No, caution, steep hill. Those things kind of help drive awareness while we're driving. And it almost feels like all of our technology is very reactive rather than proactive when it comes to awareness. And that creates kind of a confusion for the human, for the user, because we're often kind of looking for warning signs. And when we don't get it, we kind of, I want to say, back up from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it does, right? And I think that, this is where that whole training component comes in, right? And so, when your humans engage with the technology, they need to know what to look for, right? And they need to stop being so reactive, and they need to stop being so distracted, right? Because cyber criminals are banking on that. Right? They're banking on the fact that you're doing, that you're multitasking, that you're working from home in a new environment, and you've got a lot of crazy stuff going on around you, right? And they're looking for that moment where you're not on your game, right? But that awareness and training and that kind of move towards more of a cultural security environment, you're now having your humans stop and pause and say, what is this? Is this something that I should engage with? And if it's not, I need to report it or use my phishing button and report it that way, right? But I need to get some kind of attention to it. But, there are so many different, and again, we're talking predominantly phishing here, right? Because most of the breaches out there are a result of some kind of a phishing attack, right? And so, you're talking about getting your humans to look at emails and scan for different elements, right? Different elements that don't feel good or something that wouldn't be regular or usual in their environment, right? And to start questioning those things. That's the start of what success looks like in this new environment.
So I love what you just said, which is kind of the concept of you got to get humans to start paying attention to it. But I think that's where we're failing from a technology perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that is very interesting. And I come at it from a practitioner point of view, right? And not the vendor side or the human side, because I don't consider myself to be an average human when interacting with technology, because I live, breathe, eat, drink, sleep, bathe. Security's on my mind, right? But I'm an abnormal human. I'm not a use case. And you said something just a little bit ago where you said, oftentimes when we were doing these phishing tests, we were coming from a security perspective, not a human perspective. What gets a human to click? Thinking of the psychological factors of the human reaction factors that I think now we're much better at, right? And KnowBe4 has invested a lot in kind of building a very robust phishing platform that allows you to do all kinds of stuff with it. But if we just go back for just a moment and we go, let's leave all that aside for a minute, right? We're doing all the awareness stuff, and our awareness numbers are smack dab as good as one can get, right? We're never going to have 100%. I think anytime I hear someone talk about, we want to get our awareness to 97%, I'm like, you're high. That's the only thing I can say, right? You're not going to get that because humans are bound to make mistakes, right? And they're going to click on an email for a variety of reasons, sometimes unbeknown to any of us, right? Like, we don't know. Why did you click it? They were texting on their phone while they were opening their email. They saw something come through with a name. They could have been in a bet, they could have been going back and forth with that person, and they see an email come through like maybe 10 seconds after they sent one in, and they go, what does he want? Click. And, there that is. But, when we talk about technology, I think in culture, I think technology has to be a driver of culture. And so as a practitioner, I'll tell you one thing. I believe that security should be invisible to the user. See, I think the user shouldn't even know that security exists. Because to me, that's the best way to have security. It's when you don't know where it is. Because when you don't know where it is, and if you think you're being watched or looked at, the user behavior tends to be a little different. They tend to be a bit more reserved. And I think that's where we're getting technology wrong. We're putting security in the user's face, and we kind of want to force feed it down the throat of the human. I think good awareness training, building a good security culture, but but everything around that should be invisible to the user so that the user feels a bit more independent.
So, listen, I think that's a good in theory, right? And I think that our ultimate state is to get users at such a high level of readiness that they can confidently engage with technology in a manner which is fluid and which does not compromise the company in any way.
Okay.
I think we're a long way from that, and I'll give you some examples, right?
Please.
So when I was at Gartner, many of the clients would come to me and say, our phishing program is going well. We're really, driving social engineering practice within our organization. And then I would say, how long have you been doing it? They're like, we're doing it quarterly. What kind of templates are you using? Very simple templates. And then so my next comment would be, you're absolutely wasting your time and your money, right? Because there's not enough frequency or instances for you to be able to tell whether or not your employees are raising their readiness level to be able to detect these things, right? And you're not using different kinds of difficulty within your templates, right? To be able to assess whether or not your organization is good at the simple templates, not good at the difficult templates. Maybe we'll focus there, right? And so click rate becomes this desirable, unattainable thing. And they're always looking for click rates. And I'm not a big fan of just kind of the overall click rate as a deciding factor of whether or not your program is good or not. I think that it needs to be continuous. It needs to be ongoing. You need to have continuous testing, continuous engagement with your employees, and measure that accordingly based on likeness in your program, right? But there's this kind of false hope of most of the administrators, and they're saying, well, we're doing this, but are they doing it well? Are they doing it frequently enough? Are they doing it with content and templates that will give them a better understanding of where their organization is? Most of the time, the answer was no. Right. And so, this kind of engaging the user in an environment where, they just kind of don't see it. Right. It's just part of, I think that it takes organizations a while to get there. That is the ultimate state. But there's a lot of heavy lifting that goes into it from this point to get to there.
So, I agree with what you said. And I'm going to tell you where I think I was maybe a bit misunderstood. So I'll explain. You're absolutely right. There needs to be frequency in phishing tests. Doing it once a quarter is not enough. That's not a sample size. Mm-hmm. I think, what is it? An average employee gets over like 300 or 400 emails a day. Mm. So like those numbers are astounding. If you do one a quarter, then, what's really your percentages of success? You've got to kind of look at it with, it's like calculating car accident rates, right? If you're in a small town of 200 people with 200 cars on the road, right? And you go, well, this is the safest place to drive. And you're like, not really. There's 200 cars on the road. That's not a sample size. And everyone knows everyone. So no one's, people are kind of slow about their day. But you go to a city like LA, New York, Atlanta, Miami, Denver, Chicago, you're bound to see higher accident rates because there's more people on the road. There's more traffic. And therefore your chances of going into an accident increase significantly. When I talk about invisible security, I talk about overall security in general. So okay. I agree that security awareness training and security culture within the workplace is really important. I think all the rest of security needs to be invisible to the user, right? And I go about this because, I'll give you a prime example. Airports, right? So the safest airport in the world is Ben Gurion in Israel, right? Safest airport in the world. If you've ever been there, you don't see one armed security guard in the entire place. You'll see them outside as cars pull in. There's armed security guards kind of manning the entrances with a metal detector. But that's it. When you're inside the terminal, until you board your flight, you don't see anyone, any dressed-looking security guy. Mm-hmm. So you go, why? Right, because in the U.S. at our airports, we see the Homeland Security guys with their automatic rifles, walking around the terminal. We see police officers, we see security. Like, security is very heightened. You see it at the airport. So why is it in the world's most secure airport, in the world's one of the world's most dangerous and most attacked countries, do you not have any airport security past the entrance to the airport? And the answer to that is there is security. There's a ton of it, but they're dressed like you and me.
Mm-hmm.
You would never pick him out of a crowd. You'd have to be a specially trained eye to pick him out of the crowd. Now, I had a curiosity, reached out to the person who runs airport security in Israel and was like, you got to tell me the concept behind this. Because I would think, a deterrence for someone wanting to do a bad act at an airport is a bunch of guys with Uzis and machine guns right in the crowd. And he went, not really. He goes, the thinking is if I see 2 armed guards, that's who I'm taking out first before I go for any civilian. And once they're down, it's, I'm looking for uniformed officers. That's who's responding. He goes, the fact that everyone looks like a traveling passenger makes it impossible. So the moment you open fire, my entire security team can actually come at you.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know who's who. So you couldn't pick him out of the crowd. Yeah. So they'd be able to neutralize you quicker than armed security. And that concept got me thinking about what we do to our users within our organization from a security perspective. Yep. So external emails, might be phishing, all these different kind of warning signs, which are all magnificent. That's exactly what we need to do. I call those the warning signs on the side of the road, very similar to how you drive, curve, steep, sharp curve ahead or sharp turn ahead or, wildlife on the road or, the bridge may ice over first before the road does. I love those, right? But that's kind of like what we do from an email. But then all the rest of the security stuff is in the face of the user, which slows down the user and which says, with all this technology in front of me that I constantly see in front of my eyes and all this security, why do I even need to pay attention to awareness and culture? Because shouldn't tech do it? But if it disappeared, the heightened sense of people looking around like, wait, there's no one here? Where is everyone? All of a sudden your senses increase. It's like, not being able to see in the dark. All of a sudden you close your eyes, you focus, you open your eyes, and you can see better in the dark because that's the situation you're in. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't be doing the same. Meaning, I still think we should do awareness and culture and have that. But I feel like everything else around is making the user think that technology is just so good that why do I even need to do this? This may be like a checkbox compliance training rather than really something more.
Yeah, so I think that it's a good point. I will say that technology certainly does give us a false sense of security. And it may make humans, individuals, less connected to their environment. It may make them pay attention less. But I think that's where kind of that security awareness and training comes in, right? And so that's where that continued feed, and again, we're not just talking about security training classes. We're not just talking about phishing events. We're talking about ongoing communications. We're talking about champion programs where you have evangelists or advocacy teams across the organization that are kind of preaching the message. You can use lots of internal social media, lots of tools internally to be able to keep it kind of in the face of your employees so that they know the importance of it, right? And so, I think that that's one of those pieces where people think it's like training or technology, but it's so much more. There are so many other levers that you can pull in order to be able to drive the messaging. And I think that that's, I'm not talking about the poster, next to the, elevator. I think that some of those things are ineffective, but, screensavers or, intranet sites with rolling banners or, there's lots of creative ways to just continuously have something, top of mind for your employees.
I love VR for security training. I love it. I think the more interactive you can get people to feel about security,
Mm.
the more fun it is,
Mhm.
right? There's just specific things around that are just, what can I say? They're really, they really heighten the senses of someone. Like I said, it's almost like seeing, it's almost like, you're walking in the dark with a flashlight, your flashlight goes out, you close your eyes, you open them back up, you can see better in the dark now because you've helped your eyes readjust. And I think with VR, the difference is you're taking the user outside of his traditional environment and you're taking it to him. And I think part of security culture, by the way, for me, that's really important is making it personal.
Mhm.
So many times we make it all about the company. You should care about the company.
Mhm.
Well, I'm sure in most companies, you'd have about an 80% loyalty rate of employees, where 80% of people really do care about the company. But there's about 20% that are like, this is a job. I clock out at 5. I don't want to hear about anything. They don't even answer emails. Don't do anything until the next morning at 9 when they show up into the office. And, I call them the Stanley Hudsons. If you've ever seen The Office, it's kind of like the Stanley Hudsons, right? They show up right at 9. They leave right at 5. Doesn't matter what's going on in the world. That pen's going down. Arrivederci.
And that's an interesting point that you bring up, because when I was doing research at Gartner, what I found is, and I actually wrote research papers on this, is that having that personal connection, right? So how is what I'm learning professionally, how can that be transferred into my personal life? And so now if you're telling me that I will be better at spotting mischief in my electronic communications at work, and now that'll make me more in tune with what's coming into my kids' electronics, my kids' gaming systems that they're playing, just about anything, then now I'm more attentive, right? Because now you're talking about my friends, family, my loved ones, things that I really care about past work, right? And so having that kind of personal connection and making sure that those humans understand that it drives past the workplace. That's a great kind of cultural additive, right? And so traditional culture, when we look at it, is owned by human resources or owned by potentially marketing and communications, right? And so it's more about the goals and the values of an organization. When you see the security culture, though, that's more about the behaviors and ideas and customs, right? And so you're looking at something that's very different here. It's the way that people act towards something, right? And if they are heavily invested in something outside of their professional environment, and if they know that it can help them in their personal environment, now you've got something, right? And so now you've got a connection that a lot of other programs don't have, right? So if you're teaching your employees about a new CRM system, what are they going to do? Go home and talk about that at the dinner table? No, right? So that's not something that they will easily be able to connect and transfer back to their personal lives. But if you're teaching someone, hey, listen, watch these trusted sources, right? So when you get a message from LinkedIn, or when you get a message from Amazon about a purchase you made, or any other kind of big trusted name that stop and pause, because there's a lot of mischief going on in cybercrime, and it could potentially be something that could harm you or compromise our personal situation, right? And so that's very telling, right? And so that's something that they can do something with, right? And even during COVID, right, last March, we saw that there was a 6,000, not this past March, 15 months ago or so, if my math is correct, right? We're talking about a 6,000% increase in March 2020 in COVID-related phishing attacks, right? So you think that, like, the pandemic, we were at the onset of kind of the public chaos around COVID, March 2020. And just in that month alone, cyber criminals reacted. That is something that, it's a gift that kept giving, right? And so now we have phishing attacks on, where are the highest infection rates. And, then it moved to where can you get your vaccine at? And right, so the topic within COVID kept shifting. So there was continuous interest. And the same person could have been interested in that entire thread of communications coming around one incident, right? That has been kind of a very long incident. But so you see, like, these cyber criminals are looking for anything and everything that they can get into your personal and professional space in. And so that's why really having something that can transfer personally will help you out kind of in the long run overall.
Yeah. So one thing that I've really started kind of training my team on has been social media awareness. So one of the things we've started producing content on is fake recruiting messages in LinkedIn, marketplace phishing in Facebook, which, over the weekend happened to me. I'm getting ready to post on it this week later on and sharing kind of the message of the person. But there, it's all of those things have, those things from your day-to-day life impact your business, especially in the hybrid workplace that we're in today. So in the office, like you talked about earlier, you could put a screensaver and you can put a sign by the elevator. You can put stuff in the break room. You can talk about it. You can do, security happy hours in the office and bring a bunch of booze and food and get people in and not even present anything, but just have your team available and kind of network with the rest of the company in order to build bridges and understand what people are working on, some of the security questions they have, identify champions, like you said, right? Identify promoters if we use the NPS program for it, right? Because I used NPS internally, kind of a net promoter score. What was your interaction like with security and our help desk when internally? We wanted to know our NPS score within the company. I think to us that was very important, because if someone goes, I love our security team, they're super duper professional, they took care of my problem right away. Well, that's a promoter. That's someone I want on my team, right? That's someone I want out there evangelizing for me. And so when you look at kind of addressing all of those, that's again, that goes into the idea of even if you're just sitting at home and it's 11 p.m. and you're on your iPad and you're just browsing the internet, you could still fall victim to something, and that can have adverse effects on the company without a direct intention of it. And that's not a phishing email, right? That can be adware, that can be a ransomware-filled website. Lord knows we've all seen our fair share of those.
Yes. Right. And I think that, when you look at users like my kids, right, who were raised with electronics in their hands, right, and raised to be reactive to those electronics and to the apps that they're using, they move with a quickness that I can't even wrap my head around, right? I can't text as fast as they can. I can't engage in and out of the social media apps that they do quickly. But I will tell you, there's a strong need for them to stop and pause, right? Because, and I tell my kids this all the time. I have a high schooler and a college age kid, and just their inability to understand the complexity of what's behind one of those apps or what's behind something that's coming into their electronic environment at times could be very damaging. Right. And so, I think that the message ongoing from a social media perspective is, nothing goes away, and you have to watch what's coming at you very carefully.
Yeah, it's, with college aged and high school aged kids, and it's a different, we're facing a different kind of sense of adoption of technology. And we see that even in the workspace. How many of those people really, like, I can't tell you how many of our young interns, right, college-aged kids, I work on 4 or 5 monitors. They're on one with 700 tabs open. And I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I got to have like 3, 4. I mean, right now, you and I are doing this podcast. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 monitors in front of me. 6.
Wow. Yeah.
right? Because I've got my monitors divided. One side has one thing, one side has another thing, one side, my main screen is where I work and I pull things from different screens to my main screen as I'm working. I've got, my iPad for my notes and my whiteboard, and I've got my phone and I've got my laptop. Like, that's just a workstation for me.
Mm-hmm.
But these younger kids, they show up. I mean, they're young adults. I can't even call them kids. They're young adults, but they're like on their MacBook, and I'm like, how do you do all your work on just one screen? And they're, I don't know, I just do.
And what scares me is that they were raised by a generation that didn't necessarily practice as much or effectively with electronics.
Yeah.
And then when they went, kind of through their education, there was no focus in academia for that. And so we really have lots and lots of kind of untrained users roaming out there that could potentially be making, all sorts of kinds of mistakes, right? And so kind of a product of their environment too.
Joanna, so let me ask you, kind of as we wrap up,
Sure.
What are some of the best practices you would tell practitioners to take away when it comes from going from awareness to culture?
Right. So I would say ongoing, continuous security awareness curriculum. So that's courses, phishing attempts to your human environment, ongoing communications, right? And this never ends, right? So there's not a beginning and an end to this, right? And so this is something that will keep going. Try to engage your employees with content that's exciting. At KnowBe4, we have thousands and thousands of pieces of content. On one single topic, we could have 5 or 6 different options for you to be able to deliver that content to your employees. Whether it be something interactive, whether it be a video, whether it be something that's, a game, right? And so you need to have lots of options, right, to keep it more exciting and interesting. And then I would say find the communities within your organization, your advocacy teams, your evangelists, right? Build these teams to reach to the organization where you can't, right? And so, if you have, employees that are in a different country, make sure that you identify somebody within that country to be kind of the continued voice to keep driving the messaging there. It's a known individual to them. They understand the kind of the country cultural dynamics. They are more of a trusted source, right? And so leverage your employees across the globe to kind of be these figures. And I'm not talking about security professionals. I'm talking about just people who get it and people who are good at communicating it, right? And keeping that message alive. But it really is all about just being continuous and being kind of wedded to the program.
Love that. Joanna, thank you for taking time to be on the show.
How
can people connect with you? Where can they follow you? Are you on LinkedIn?
I am.
Okay.
And so I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. If you go to KnowBe4, we have lots of on-demand webinars. You can catch some of my stuff there. We have lots of free resources. I've got white papers there. If you're a part of Gartner, you can go back and read lots of my research that I did there. And so those are probably the best ways.
Awesome. Folks, Joanna Huisman, she's the Senior VP of Strategic Insights and Research over at our friends at KnowBe4. Thank you so much for being with us for this week's Tech Corner. Folks, we'll be back on Monday with the Practitioner Brief live at 9 a.m. on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and you name it, you can find it there. Also on your favorite podcast listening platform. So tune in live at 9 a.m. to catch the latest. Also, make sure to check out our CISO Talk Clubhouse room, our Digital Debate Clubhouse room, the other side of cyber with the awesome JJ room on Clubhouse as well. We're doing a lot more on Clubhouse now, so you'll definitely want to be there. It allows for more of a two-way conversation rather than just a one-way conversation. Kind of audio has changed the world when it comes to that. So That's it for us here, folks. We'll be back with a lot more on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend or whatever time you're listening to this. Thanks so much for tuning in. Again, Joanna, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Cheers, folks.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. And get all the latest information at cyberhubpodcast.com.